Good evening, and again, welcome to Blue Connections. Welcome to episode 6. My name is Donna Ozarko, and I am the manager of softball and the manager of officials and publications for Softball Canada.
And I'm Jeff Whipple, National Director of Umpires for Softball Canada. We're so excited you've been able to join us again on this webinar journey. Blue Connections 2020 is designed to bring umpires together virtually to learn from some of our country's leading officials. These webinars will focus on basic techniques and expectations for officials and will reference best practices on mechanics, game management, and fitness from both the WBSC and Softball Canada.
And just a reminder that all sessions will be recorded and available on our Softball Canada Umpire YouTube channel and Facebook pages. And if you have any questions for our presenter, you can leave them in our chat section and we'll pass the questions on to our presenter at the end. Who's on first? Abbott and Costello made a legendary comedy script based on a lineup, but serious game management starts with managing the lineups in your own game. Join international veteran Steve Camus as he shares some of his tricks to staying out of trouble and ensure he always knows who's on first.
Steve's been umpiring for 23 years, earning his Level 5 slow pitch certification in 2007 and became a WBSC certified slow pitch umpire in 2011. Internationally, he worked the 2011 World Senior Men's Games, the 2012 USA Softball National Championships, and the 2016 WBSC Co-Ed World Cup. Steve was the UIC for the Border Battle and has been a UIC or DUIC at several Canadian championships, as well as an on-field umpire. Off-field, Camus leads the largest provincial program in Canada as he's the slow pitch UIC for Softball Ontario.
Welcome, Steve, and everybody enjoy this presentation. Thanks, Steve.
Well, thanks, Donna and Jeff, for inviting me. This is a great opportunity to share some experiences that I've had over my 23 years of umpiring. And just like many, and I welcome the entire group attending this webinar, just like many of you, we've learned so much over years of experience and how to do different things differently. We all steal ideas from each other, and hopefully you'll be able to steal some ideas from me over the next 20 to 25 minutes. One thing I've learned about umpiring is that not any situation is like the other. Every situation is different. And what I mean by that is depending on maybe the caliber of ball, maybe the location of where you're umpiring, the situation is going to be different. For example, if I'm at a Canadian championship, I know there's a lot of regulations and a lot of protocol, and everything is pretty much exactly how it should be when I review a rule book. But when I'm umpiring a local league game, well, it's not like that at all. And you need to adjust quite a bit to manage that game during a league. So what I'm going to try and do today is I'm going to try and talk about different situations that is going to grab the attention of all of us in the group. And I mean that by the umpires who have as much experience or even more than myself, or maybe just the grassroots umpire who just has a year or two into the program. And hopefully you can steal some ideas from me. So the big question that we've been trying to answer this year is, how are we going to handle lineups safely during COVID-19? So not only lineups, but the entire game. And Softball Canada's put a great return to play package together. Other provinces have followed suit. So that helps us quite a bit if we use that as a gauge. As far as lineups during COVID-19, what's going to happen when we're going to start is we're going to start by doing it the safest way we know how. And just like how things evolved from March 12th to now, March 12th, everything shut down and we basically went through different steps. And as people educated themselves and learned a better way of doing things, things changed. And that's what's going to happen with our softball game. We're going to start out by doing things, and then we're going to find different ideas that are going to work better. So it's all about adjusting. So at the start, when we do get back to the game, whether it's this year or next year, hopefully sooner rather than later, the lineups, what we'd like to be done is for the lineups to be posted on the backstop. You're not to be exchanging the lineup cards with the teams. So it's going to be a little more difficult for you than the normal everyday game that you've umpired in the past. So the lineup cards will be on the backstop for reference for the umpire and for both teams. The umpire is going to have to carry a notepad and a pen and record any changes. The teams will still make changes through you, but you will not record those changes on the lineup card. What you'll do is you'll record those changes on your notepad and pen, on your notepad with your pen. So it'll be up to you on the best way you can find to do that, to manage your lineup card. Whether you decide to write the lineup card on your notepad, or maybe even just the numbers, that'll help you. So whatever way you find best, go for it. And then I'm sure you're going to go through different scenarios as you umpire throughout the months and weeks, and you're going to find better ways to go about it. So right now, backstops are where the lineup cards go. They do not get exchanged between the teams and the umpires. Okay, so pre-game lineup card preparation. Keep it on that slide that we had up there for a minute, please. So the pre-game lineup card preparation, it's all about knowledge and education. You can't just accept these lineup cards and trust that the teams filled them out properly. Please take the time, review them carefully for all the details that you need to know. And those details are full names, first name, last name, numbers, defensive position, and there's the coach's signature at the bottom. So there's many things you need to double check with the lineup card. And what you need to do is, once you reviewed it and you've checked all the details, explain to the team what you have seen on their lineup card. For example, you're in slow pitch, maybe a slow pitch team decided to bat 11. Coach, you're batting 11 with 3 subs. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay, so you've confirmed that lineup card, and you do that with the same with the other team. Okay, so pregame lineup card is huge. And make sure you're aware of how many subs each team have. That'll help you during the course of the game if there's a lot of substitutions or maybe some chaos comes into your game. And I'll explain that a little later in our seminar here. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. So this is traditionally what a lineup card looks like for Softball Canada and Canadian Championship. So I've done the lineup card in a fast pitch manner. Okay, there's 10 on the lineup card. In the 10th spot is the flex, and you see the number 6 hitter is the DP, the designated player. And we'll go into flex and designated player a little later in the lineup card. But as you can see, all of it is filled out correctly. We have the team, we have the game number, we have the section, which is men's. It might be fast pitch, slow pitch, co-ed, it could be anything. There's the uniform number, defensive position, and all the substitutions are listed with their uniform numbers as well as the coach's signature at the bottom. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, now, what do we do without a lineup card? In fast pitch, for the most part, even in league play, you will have a lineup card mainly because of the DP and the flex. For the most part in slow pitch, you will not. but I'm sure there's fast pitch games out there that you may not come across a lineup card. So what do you do? So again, make sure you have that notepad and pen. Have the teams assist you. They should both have at least rule books or some sort of documentation written down. And make sure you confirm all the changes with both teams. All three of you need to be on the same page, and I mean that by the umpire and both teams. If you make changes and don't communicate it to the other team, we could have problems because we don't have a lineup card to refer to. Check and confirm every half inning. This is huge. If you confirm every half inning, you're not going to have a situation where you're going to have something come up that is maybe 3 innings old, and now you need to go back in the scorebook and address it and try and find a solution. So if you can confirm things every half inning with both teams, that'll go a long way. Little thing to even add to, when you don't have all the tools when you need to umpire, like another small trick, say you're at a ball diamond, you don't have anything with you, you don't have an indicator, use rocks as a guide to help you to keep track of how many outs. So if you have 2 rocks, put them in your one pocket, and as there's an out, put the one rock in the other pocket, and then a second out, put the second rock in the other pocket, and it just helps. You need to have something. Okay, next, oh no, leave it on that slide, leave it on that slide. So how to be efficient and using your lineup card as a tool. Okay, what I mean by that, using your lineup card as a tool, is you need to show people you care. And we teach so many umpires in clinics that we put on today about caring about players, respecting them. Listen to what they have to say. And what I'm about to say to you about the lineup card falls in the same parameter as that. So when I have a lineup card, I'll use that as a tool of strength. And what I mean by that is if I have to address a player in a situation where everybody's going to hear me, I will address that player by his or her number or his or her position. But if I'm talking to a player possibly one-on-one, maybe I want to talk to the pitcher about something that he or she is doing while pitching, and it's a one-on-one conversation, maybe between half innings, I will be aware of that pitcher's name, and I may say to that pitcher, Sarah, what I'm noticing a little bit of no pause. So is there any chance you could slow it down so we don't have any problems going forward? So what'll happen is Sarah realizes that I've cared enough to know her name and have a private conversation with her. So she's going to do her best to adhere to what I asked. If I refer to her, hey, Pitch, can you come over here, and I have a conversation with her? Sure, the conversation may go great, but referring her by name in that situation, it helps so much. So that's just a little trick I do in my games, and I feel that goes a long way. You need to be aware of eligible players available at all times. Okay? If a team is making a change, accept the change. Okay? But in a situation where, trying to say this in a way I can explain it properly, where there's a situation where there is a chance that you may be contemplating ejecting a player, it helps to know how many substitutes are on the lineup card for both teams. Okay? I don't want it to change the way you umpire, but I want it to be at least in your mind. I want you to be there to umpire a fair game for both teams, and you're there for the players. Okay. So now we're going to go into how to make lineup card changes on our next slide. Okay, well, first of all, that's a picture of the pen I use when I go out and umpire, and I usually carry 2 of them. So when I first started umpiring, I carried the traditional small mini pencil, and that was great. Then I started carrying the blue pen, and then I came across an idea of, you know what, I could really use a red pen because that'll show my markings on the lineup card very easily, and I want to be efficient, be able to see things quickly. So what I did was I went to the dollar store and I grabbed a couple of these pens, the pens that we all know that have the 4 colors, black, blue, green, and red, and they work marvelous when you're doing changes on a lineup card. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so I've got some changes already done here, and this is mostly for slow pitch right now. We'll get into fast pitch following the slow pitch. So the number 1 hitter, number 24, Rickey Henderson, started the game. The team has decided to put number 11 in, substitute D, Darnell Coles, into Rickey Henderson's spot. So what you do is you put a little mark beside number 11 to show that they're in the game. You can see a little mark beside Darnell Coles in the substitute list. And you put the number 11 up top beside the 24. Okay, so now Rickey Henderson's out and Darnell Coles is in. So now Darnell Coles isn't a starting player and he's not really that strong. So now we want a really good defensive player in for Darnell Coles. And we're going to put Shawn Green in for Darnell Coles, number 56. So we do the same thing with Shawn Green, number 56, and we put him in for Darnell Coles. Okay. So now Rickey Henderson, he's always been a great player, and we want him back at the plate. So we can re-enter Rickey Henderson now, and Rickey Henderson can go back in. As you see, number 24 is back in for 56. So now what has happened, and this is where you need to pay attention because it's different in fast pitch and slow pitch. So in slow pitch today, 11 and 56 can both re-enter the game later on in that number 1 batting slot only. So Rickey Henderson, who's back in the game, number 24, he could get removed again from the game, and 11 and 56 can go back in that spot if they choose to. Or you could even take number 6, Carlos Delgado, off that substitute list and bring him up in that number 1 slot. So 56 and 11 can come back in, but only in that number 1 slot. So the easiest way to remember this for slow pitch is every player, starter or substitute, can be re-entered into the game once. So Rickey Henderson's a starting player. He can be re-entered once, as we see there on the lineup card. Shawn Green, 56, where the arrow is right now, has entered the game once, but now he can be re-entered once. So Shawn Green can come back in afterwards for Rickey Henderson if they choose to do that. You can do that in slow pitch only, okay? In fast pitch, those substitutes, 11 and 56, they cannot re-enter the game once. They can only enter the game once. So those changes there on the lineup card, 24, 11, 56, 24, is perfectly fine in a fast pitch game. But 11 and 56 cannot come back in the game after they were pulled because they were not a starting player. Okay? So that's the difference between fast pitch and slow pitch. At the top of your lineup card, you see conferences, number 66. So 66 is the flex player in fast pitch, and he's the pitcher. Okay? So you need to keep track of how many conferences that pitcher has, because if you don't, you're not going to know. And you need to track a whole bunch of different things depending on the game you're umpiring. So for example, fast pitch, you're keeping track of conferences. Slow pitch, you're keeping track of conferences. You're also keeping track of home runs, and you're also keeping track, depending on the tournament. So right now in slow pitch, bats are provided, but in the past they were not. So we had to count the number of bats as well. So anything you need to keep track of, make sure you do that on that lineup card. Now, what I'm going to do with the DP and flex, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm a slow pitch umpire who has a little bit of fast pitch experience. So Jeff Whipple and I are going to have a conversation about this designated player and this flex player. So in fast pitch, we have 10 batters on the lineup card. And the only time you'll have 10 batters in your starting lineup card is when you're using the flex. So when you're using the flex, you're using the DP. Okay? As you can see, Juan Guzman's the flex and Paul Molitor's the DP. So Jeff, I'm going to have you talk about the scenarios if the flex decides to go in to hit for the DP or if the DP decides to go in for the flex.
So Steve, what happens in fast pitch is that, well, they're two different situations. Both of them result in the team temporarily playing with 9 players. So let's look at the first scenario, and that would be where Paul Molitor, the DP who's in the game right now, would come out. So maybe he gets a single, gets on base. He's not very fast, and they want to put Guzman in to run for him. So what they would do is that would be a substitution. So Molitor would come out, Guzman would go in, and so we would take the number 66, just like you have here with number 4. The number 66 would go right in here. Oh, didn't want to do that. Right in here next to the 19. So we'd write in number 66. It's a substitution. In this case, because Molitor down here where we have Alfredo Griffin, Dick Schofield, they've all lost lives, so you have marked them down with an asterisk. We're going to do the same thing beside Molitor because Molitor is now out of the game. So we're going to give him a little asterisk of some sort. You can do whichever one you'd like, whatever kind of marking that you make sense to you. So you would, 66 would go right in here, and Molitor would be coming out of the game. So he's lost a life, as we would say. In the other situation, what we've got is Molitor going in for Guzman. So in that situation, we have got Molitor going into play defense. So he's going to come in here, and so maybe he's going to pitch. So we're going to take out this DP, and we're going to write the number 1 beside it. And we're going to put a little star or an asterisk right beside Guzman, because that tells us that he's now out of the game. And so, because this is a defensive change, we're going to put the number 1 or whatever position he's now going to be playing defensively right beside that. And you know what I always do too, is I always make a little note, maybe over on the right-hand side, to make an indication that because Molitor is not changing any place in the batting order, so there's not really a there is a substitution. So he is actually coming in to play defense for Guzman. So maybe you could take the 19 and put it right here, just to make sure that these are connected. But what I'd also do is maybe make yourself some kind of a mark over here, just to bring those two together, just to say these two are related. Okay, and at some point, though, they can re-enter. So let's say Guzman runs, he goes in for 66, then Molitor comes back in to play offense at a later point. Then we're going to take that 19 and put him right next to the 66, just like we would in any other situation where he's re-entering.
Sounds good. Okay, one thing I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, in slow pitch, I know I talked a little bit about the extra player. So in slow pitch, you can choose to bat 10 or 11. And if you bat 11, you mark down EP, extra player. But of those 11 hitters, any 10 can play defense. So you can interchange your defense at any time you want during the game when you're using an extra player. That extra player can play defense all game long or whichever innings you choose to. And in co-ed, you can use 2 extra players. Okay. Another thing to take note, and it's not necessarily a lot to do with lineup cards, but I spoke about conferences and I spoke about number of bats because a lot of umpires umpire in different areas. Like automatically, I think of the umpire who umpires in Ontario because that's my home turf, right? So when we're umpiring in Ontario, we're keeping track of conferences, number of bats, home runs, courtesy runners. We have a whole bunch of stuff on our lineup card. The other thing you need to indicate on your lineup card on any level is if you have a replacement player situation come into your game. So a replacement player comes into the game. So let's say number 10, the number 9 hitter, Pat Borders, who's number 10, say he gets injured in the second inning of the slow pitch game you're playing in or the fast pitch game. Anybody, like let's say Carlos Delgado, we'll put Carlos Delgado in for Pat Borders as the replacement player because Pat Borders, his knee is bleeding, okay? So Delgado comes in the second inning when Borders gets hurt. Document that on your lineup card, that Delgado, number 6, is your replacement player and which inning he did it in. Because now Delgado can play for Pat Borders in the second and third inning. But if Borders cannot come back for the fourth inning, the team has to make an official change. And that official change can be anybody. It doesn't necessarily just have to be Delgado who stays in for Borders. It can be somebody else who comes in as a substitute for Pat Borders then if he's not ready to continue in the fourth inning. Okay. Re-entry. A lot of people ask me the difference between a re-entry and an illegal re-entry and a legal substitution. If you can remember the 3 definitions of an illegal re-entry, everything else is an illegal substitution. So an illegal re-entry is when a starting player re-enters the game more than he or she is allowed. Option 2 is when a substitute re-enters the game more than he or she is allowed, or if somebody enters the batting lineup in a position they are not allowed to be put in. So for example, say Pat Borders comes out of the game and Delgado goes in, and they bring Borders back in as a re-entry, but Borders doesn't go back into the 9th spot where he started. He goes into maybe the 5th spot. That's an illegal re-entry. So those are your 3 definitions of an illegal re-entry. Everything else is an illegal substitution. And then the one last thing I'm going to touch on before I close this is the temporary runner at a Canadian championship in slow pitch is mandatory. And you use that regardless of how many outs when the pitcher reaches base. And in fast pitch, the temporary runner is optional for the catcher. Okay, so it's not mandatory in fast pitch, but it is mandatory in slow pitch. Before I close this, what I want to ask Jeff is, Jeff, I know when we do league and slow pitch, the majority of the time we're umpiring without a lineup card, and for the most part, the teams help us out quite a bit with the scorebooks. What is the biggest obstacle you have as a league umpire in fast pitch when you don't have a lineup card?
Well, I think most of the time in fast pitch, Steve, you're going to find that there is a lineup card. I can't remember very many games where I didn't. Some of them are pretty bad. Some of them may only have, 10 names written down. And the biggest thing is that you want to identify if you've got 10. If you've only got 9 players written down and there's only 9 bodies there, you don't care who's the DP or who's the pitcher, who's first base. Defensively, you really often don't care. All you want to make sure is that you've got a batting order. And you may only have first names. A lot of leagues, especially recreational men's or women's leagues, maybe not even have numbers. So it's just important that you have 9 names or 10 names in order. And if you do have 10, you really want to make sure you identify that who the DP is. You know the flex is number 9 or number 10, but you need to know who that DP is. Everybody else defensively, you know, it's basically a free for all. You don't care who's out in what position as long as you know who that DP is. But the biggest thing is, you know, in most fast pitch, like I said, I don't really recall doing any games without a lineup card. I think you're going to see 99.9% of the time you're going to have a lineup card, even in rec ball. And the other thing is that we do a lot of minor stuff. So there's, and there the coaches are very good at making sure lineup cards are made and done, and they're going to look a lot like what you've got here on the page. They're going to be pretty complete.
Great. Okay, so as I close, Jeff, if you could take me to the last slide, I just want to thank all the attendees for coming and joining us on this webinar. I want to thank Softball Canada, along with Jeff Whipple, Donald Ozarko, and Darren Jarwa, for inviting me, because I love sharing my experiences as an umpire. And it just makes me feel so good when I can see an umpire maybe steal an idea or suggestion I have and they use it in their game. So thank you to everybody, and I hope to see everybody real soon.
Cool. Well, you're not getting away too soon. There's some questions here.
Okay.
I did learn something today, Steve. In fact, I saw something that sort of triggered, because one of the things I noticed here when I looked at yours, I always wrote them starting here. So if I was going to do a substitution for 29 for Joe Carter, and I was going to put Carlos Delgado in, I would always write number 6 on the right after Joe Carter's name. But I really like how you've done it and worked from right to left rather than left to right. I think that's a neat thing. But there are some questions here. One from Don Fryer. Don wants to know, with respect to official scores, will they be working off the lineup cards that are on the backstops as well? I suspect in most leagues the teams are keeping the score, but if you do have an official score. What are your thoughts around that, Steve?
Yeah, I would think so as well. Just because you can't have everybody transferring those lineups, and I think it's just you're going to have one copy hung so the umpire can see it on the inside of the backstop, and I believe you'd have to have another copy hung on the outside of the backstop for the scorekeeper to see it.
Cool. And we have a question here from Fred Malachis. Fred says, when in the plate conference, and this is a fast pitch thing, Steve, so you might get off the hook here. When you're in a plate conference, the umpire goes through the conference and then asks if there are any changes. One coach says, I'm dropping to 9. So one of the thing, and Fred brings up what's become a fairly common practice with fast pitch and using the flex and the DP. Oftentimes the team will start, they'll have 10 players on their lineup card. So then once the lineup cards become official, it's a common strategy when they have a pitcher who they want to use, sort of who isn't a great hitter, but they want to keep them down, but they want to keep their starting pitcher in the game. So what they're going to do is, as soon as the lineup cards become official, then we've just got a substitution, and you would just do it as a regular substitution. So the coach comes out, you've got a clean sheet on your lineup card, you go through the conference, and the coach then says, okay, I'm going to make a substitution now. It doesn't matter that it's happening before the first pitch. It's now going to be an official substitution because the lineup cards are legal. And so you would just do a substitution. So Guzman would go in for Molitor, and so he would move up to 66, and there you go. So he's going to hit. Molitor is coming out of the game, and they're down to 9 players, even to start the game, even before you've thrown the first pitch. So, and that happens fairly common. Just treat it like a regular substitution. It's no different than anything else, just because it happened before the first pitch. And Yasmeet Chima asks us why lineup cards are for the offensive team. What about the defensive team? So Yasmeet, you'll see here that each team is going to give you a lineup card. So you'll have one for the Toronto Blue Jays. You may also have one for the Montreal Expos. And that's going way back. So you then would have 2 lineup cards, and each team would have an offensive lineup, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in terms of your batting order, or 10 and 11 if you're in slow pitch. And over here on the right-hand side, you have your defensive lineup for that particular team. So both teams represent both their offense and their defense on a single lineup card. So you would have 2 lineup cards. Al Johnson has a question, Steve. Pre-COVID, do you have both lineup cards in the same holder, and post-COVID too, hopefully? Or do you have a separate one for a home team and a separate one for the visitor? So do you use one lineup card holder or 2?
I use one lineup card holder, and I have them on separate sides of the lineup card holder. And what I've experimented with just recently, because I'm all about efficiency, because slow pitch is a little bit different than fast pitch and baseball. Slow pitch, the game moves very quickly. The only thing slow about slow pitch is the pitch. Slow pitch is all about, okay, let's go, let's go. So as you're taking a change or making a change, that batter's in the batter's box ready to go. So the secret to being efficient as an umpire is practice. And I'm sure we've all done quirky things on our own. We've danced at home in the mirror. I'm telling you, you need to practice at home your efficiency as an umpire, and I do it. I have practiced with the lineup card in my breast pocket. I've practiced with it in my back pocket. And recently, I've carried 2 ball bags, which is rare in slow pitch. I know it's common in fast pitch, but it's rare in slow pitch. And that second ball bag is very easy to get that lineup card out of your ball bag and write down. So in saying that, it's all about efficiency. It's all about being quick as an umpire.
Good. Well, thank you, Steve. That completes episode 6 of Blue Connections 2020. Thanks to Steve for sharing of his time and expertise. And a special thanks goes out to Level 5 umpire Darren Gerwar for his work as co-producer on this series. Join us next week as Terry Richter and Jason Clark talk about keys to a consistent strike zone in both fast pitch and slow pitch.
It's on the YouTube channel soon. And Steve, that was awesome. Thank you so much for the insight. And I'm learning from you umpires, and you guys are awesome.
Thanks, Donna.
Perfect.
We'll see you next Sunday. And this is
Yes.
going to be on YouTube and our Softball Canada channel. And hope you all stay safe and healthy. Okay.
See you next week.
Elbow bump.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.